The US-Iran conflict is now entering a critical and unpredictable phase. The Pentagon in the US is reportedly preparing for weeks of limited ground operations in Iran, including potential raids on strategic sites like the Karg Island and other coastal areas near the Strait of Hormuz. While these plans fall short of a full-scale invasion, they could involve special operations troops and conventional infantry, exposing US forces to Iranian drones, missiles, and ground fire. So far, around 3,500 US Marines and sailors have arrived in the Middle East aboard the USS Tripoli, with thousands more from the 82nd Airborne Division scheduled for deployment. Officials insist that these moves are contingency measures, providing the President of the US with maximum optionality rather than signaling an imminent invasion. Iran, however, is sending a chilling message. Iran's Parliament Speaker Mohammad Bagher Ghalibaf has warned that any ground attempt will be met with decisive retaliation. Tehran's Revolutionary Guard has even targeted US and Israeli universities in the region, calling them legitimate targets if strikes continue. Iranian naval commanders have also vowed to target aircraft carriers like the USS Abraham Lincoln if they enter firing range. Meanwhile, the conflict's reach is extending beyond Iran's borders, clearly, with Yemen's Houthi forces aligned with Tehran having threatened to intervene in the Red Sea, Gulf of Aden and Bab al-Mandeb Strait, critical maritime choke points for global oil shipments. Analysts are warning that any disruption could spike up crude oil prices even further and destabilize global energy markets. Diplomatic efforts continue alongside military preparations. Pakistan is hosting talks with Saudi Arabia, Turkey and Egypt, aiming to mediate between Washington and Tehran. But both sides are signaling that the next few days could determine whether this crisis escalates into full-scale conflict or finds a path to negotiation. We have Ambassador Yogesh Gupta, former Indian diplomat, now joining us on the broadcast. We also have Major General S.B. Asthana, defense and strategic expert, and Nirmal Abraham, political analyst and US expert, with us. Thank you, all of you, for taking time out to be with us. I'm going to begin by asking Ambassador Yogesh Gupta, how much diplomacy can work at this stage, Ambassador Yogesh Gupta?
Not much, because there is a huge gap, distance, in the positions of the US and Iran. And the United States is treating Iran as a defeated country, which Iran is not. And Iran is not prepared to accept defeat, at least as of this point. And I think President Trump has got some uncertain, unclear, and vague notions about this war. And this dispatch of ground troops is going to make this war more destructive, more ghastly, more dangerous, and it will have huge implications because it will become very difficult for ships to pass through the Gulf, through the Strait of Hormuz. And this will have huge impact on the price of oil, gas, fertilizer, oil-based items, trade with Gulf countries, and so on. So this war is going to it's going to ruin the economy of these countries and others. And this is a very, I would say, a president of the United States has not thought through the implications of this. He is just doing what comes to his mind. It's very unfortunate that the US is indulging in this kind of tactics.
I'm going to take this across to Major S.B. Asthana. That what we're hearing about a possible ground deployment, is that more of a threat that the US is issuing to the Iran, that we are ready to prepare to take this conflict to the next level, to make Iran cave, or do you think that's a realistic possibility there will be boots on the ground?
Firstly, to answer your question, is it a threat? Yes, it is a threat. Is it military posturing? It is military posturing into the Middle East. can it really get converted into a ground action? Now there I will have to analyze like a military analyst. You see, what has happened is that firstly, all their combat ship, including Tripoli as well as the other ship, both are outside the Strait of Hormuz and both are outside the Gulf. They have to first pass through to get in there, number one. Number two, if you see the area of Gulf, there are many islands which are interdicting the Strait of Hormuz. To start with, Kharg again is an important strategic target. And if you have to look at the targets and objectives of United States, Abu Musa is another island which where the strip is quite narrow, where the passage is narrow. Then you have Greater Tim and Lesser Tim. These are three islands. And then you have Faroe Island. And then you come to the larger island, which is the Question Island. And short of that is another Hengen Island. Now, these islands are important. Why I'm naming all these islands is because if all of them are not with you, the Strait of Hormuz is not clear. And the kind of force level which USA has so far, even as a rhetoric shown, is 12 to 13,000 troops. They are certainly not good enough to capture all these islands. They can capture one or two islands and not beyond that. So if that be so, then obviously Strait of Hormuz will not be cleared even by a ground action. Number two, ground action on the mainland of Iran is very difficult for the simple reason because the kind of forces which Iran has, more than 6 lakh troops, obviously you can't win over by 12,000 troops here. So I think that is absurd. So thinking that itself is absurd. Limited action is basically limited to the perhaps coastline. Now coastline, they have got some bases which are into the folds of mountains and which are also striking through the tunnels. So this is the kind of deployment which exists. Now the problems with them are, even if you, let's say hypothetically, are able to now inject those forces and inject both the aircraft groups, that is amphibious aircraft groups inside, then what happens is, thereafter, even if let's say you land up in some island, retaining that island will become a problem. If US could not retain those 13 bases and they had to push out to hotels, how can these troops be retained there? Now, the other option is, and now if you are looking at an option that, okay, we try and just do some kind of raid and get out, then obviously you have achieved nothing. Because even in Kerch Island, nothing is very much achieved with just going and coming out. So basically, there are problems. Similarly, the second major military factor is the surprise has been lost. The Iranian military is very well aware that something like that is going to happen. If Russia or China are helping them with the intelligence and surveillance, then all satellites would be looking at all these landings and all the landing sites, as well as even for the helicopter troops. Now, even if, let's say, these paratroopers, they finally try and manage, they are most vulnerable while they are landing. So that part will also be perhaps catered for. I'm sure by now, Iranians would have, with their shoulder-fired missiles, they would have placed everybody around to make sure that the amphibious landing or the paratrooper landing does not happen so easily. So there are a lot of problems, which I'm sure military planners of USA would be aware, but unfortunately they have nothing else to show. So optics is also important and threat is also important, and hoping like hell that because of these threats, maybe the Iran can give in or Iran can somehow give some kind of go ahead for some kind of diplomatic talks, and you can declare victory and try and find some exit route out. So these are the kinds of challenges which are there. I'll discuss a little more as we go along.
Fair enough. Nirmal, Abraham, at this stage, all eyes are on whether the only thing left is it can go either ways. It can go with the further escalation going forward. The posturing from both ends have been, to paraphrase, have been terrible because Iran, the moment reports in the US media started coming out about a possible ground deployment, came that message from Iran that they will be fed to sharks of the Persian Gulf, all the troops over there. And in the meanwhile, Trump right now is under enormous pressure to outline the objectives of the war. Vice President J.D. Vance has said, it was going to end soon, but clearly, it is going in the other direction. So this next 48 to 72 hours could prove to be most crucial as far as this war is concerned.
Absolutely. And I think Trump is in a lot of pressure, not just politically, but also economically, because this war is a costly affair for them, because each day they spend about 160 crore US dollars, and which is amounted to a big amount. And also, if you consider the debt of the US debt at the moment has touched 39 trillion. They are a $31 trillion economy. And so at the moment, if you look at the GDP to debt ratio, that's about 125%, which is really bad, because the last time the US touched 125% or even close to that was during the Second World War. So people are aware of this, and they're also aware of the fact that this is, at least some of them argue that this is a fight that they're doing for Israel. So people are not happy. So that keeps Trump under a lot of pressure. Number two, if you look at the negotiations, I think you must admit that Iran has actually won the first phase, or at least survived successfully in the first phase of the war. Because if you look at the negotiation points that Trump has brought forward this time, he is willing to allow Iran to continue with their uranium enrichment program for peaceful as well as civilian purposes, which he didn't when the war started. Also about ballistic missiles, he's willing to have a conversation. So where have things lightened up? It's lightened up from the part of Trump. That itself shows that Iran has successfully survived, and I use those words carefully. Now, if they were to go ahead with a ground invasion, either in one of the islands or in the mainland of Iran, that would prove disastrous, because that would mean that the US may end up not having an exit route. Now, I'm not, as I said before, for Iran, this is only a matter of survival. They win if they survive. So imagine this, US does a ground invasion. All Iran has to do is capture a small bunch of US soldiers. Let's say they capture 20 US soldiers. That could be a political leverage that they can use, a negotiation tool that they could use. Imagine the amount of pressure that would loom on Donald Trump and his allies if that happens, or if someone dies, if any of the troops die. A promise that Trump gave to the troops and to the people was he will never send US troops abroad. That's something that he used to say in the 2016 campaign, as well as in the 2020 and 24 campaigns. So that will put him under tremendous pressure. The US will end up not having a way out if that happens. And also Iran is, as I've said before in the same discussion, is a natural fortress. On the one side, they have mountains. On the other side, they have a dry, blistering desert. It's really hard, if you don't know the terrain, to go into a place like Iran, a country which is almost half the size of India, and trying to conquer them with 13,000 troops is virtually impossible. So I think I still believe it's posturing, but if you were to ask me who is leading at the moment, if not saying this is a war, it's not a game, but still, I would say Iran has managed to survive successfully, which is what was not expected of them. Whereas Israel and the US, particularly, have spent so much money and have unfortunately lost lives in the war, which they never expected it back home.
Fair enough. Ambassador Gupta, as we speak, their diplomatic efforts are continuing. Pakistan is hosting talks. There is Saudi Arabia, Turkey, and Egypt, coming together to possibly mediate and find a solution. Do you think they will be successful?
No, I don't attach much importance to these talks, because the role of these countries, Saudi Arabia, they are saying one thing to Trump, and they are saying quite another thing for public consumption. Turkey and the other one that you mentioned, they don't have much of a role in this war. So I really don't see much, I don't give much importance to these talks. Just that Pakistan is doing some sort of a show to earn some goodwill from the US and Saudi Arabia and others. I don't think these talks are going to be helpful at all.
Do you think the talks that are still supposedly going on between Iran and the US could still yield something? Because there's still back-channel talks between the US and Iran, isn't it?
Yes, I think those talks are going on, and that is something good, because parties must keep talking. But, the kind of, the way we have seen things in the past, Trump has very high expectations, very high hopes in terms of what he should get from Iran, and Iran is nowhere going to be there, to concede those things, giving up its nuclear capability, giving up much of its missile capability. These are not things which can be done easily, and given the situation that Iran is in, and given the overall geopolitical configuration of the Middle East, which is getting more and more dominated by Israel, I don't think Iran is going to agree to any such thing. So I don't attach much importance or much. I'm not expecting much from these talks.
Okay, fair enough. Let me take this across to Major General S.B. Asthana. Then let's talk about the fact that if the talks are not going to work, it's going to be eventually a fight to the finish, isn't it, Major General S.B. Asthana, as the stage? And what could that possible finish be? Will ground deployment be the right escalation to ensure that this war doesn't go on for so long? It's already been more than about 5 weeks. We're in the second month of the war.
See, to bring war to a conclusive end, the kind of ground operation required, America has not prepared for it.
Okay.
Because for that, you require uh, lakhs of troops and a very strong ground logistic support system. When they invaded Iraq, they took 6 months to prepare for that in Saudi Arabia. When they landed up in Afghanistan, they did almost 6 months of preparation in Pakistan to do that. They have not done any such preparation this time. So therefore, a major ground operation in Iran is out of question. And also, without just by standoff strikes, they will not be able to bring this war to a conclusive end. Even if, let's say, hypothetically, Iran's missile arsenal and drone arsenal gets start reducing, which is obvious, which will happen as it prolongs. Then, in my opinion, Iran is going to shift from conventional war to asymmetric war, guerrilla warfare, that they will just target one or two ships with couple of drones once in 2-3 days, and that will keep everybody, that will keep the Strait of Hormuz closed for them, for the Americans and Israelis and their allies, and it will cause requisite deterrence, and they will not know what to do with Iran. So like that, they can continue for a much longer time, and I think that is what their strategy is all about. It's an asymmetric war from all angles. Iran knows that it cannot win against the combat might of Israel and USA. So basically, as was rightly mentioned by the other co-panelist, his strategic aim is regime survival or Iran survival, and its other aim is, military aim is, that impose as much cost as you can in terms of political cost, economic cost, military cost on President Trump and Netanyahu. Now that is the strategic aim uh, of Iran, and that is a practical aim. Whereas the strategic aim of Trump started actually declining, as was rightly mentioned, from unconditional surrender. Now he's talking about, okay, nuclear for peaceful purposes, okay, missile also okay, etc., etc. They have come down, whereas the trajectory is different that side, the other side. Whatever were the demands of Iran before the war, their demands today have hardened much more than what they were. Like control over Hormuz, it was nowhere there before the war started. So therefore, on one side, the demands are declining, which indicates that they are on a back foot. And on the other side, the demands are getting hardened. So with this kind of trajectory, I think as far as what you are looking at the end state, I think USA started off with the unpractical end state. Now they still don't know whether their end state is having Kharg Island or clearing Strait of Hormuz or defeating Iran. They are confused between the three. As far as Iran is concerned, their end state is very clear. We have to survive, and we have to make sure that that US and Israel get a lesson that they never think of attacking again. Now that is, it seems that they are closer towards a practical aim, and the American side is not conceding to the impractical aim which they set out for themselves. There is another problem, if you give me a few more seconds.
Okay.
What has happened is, President Trump's biggest dilemma is, that if he walked out of JCPOA to say that Iran not making nuclear bomb is not good enough. They also should not have missiles and they should not be able to help the proxies. And that is why I'm moving out of JCPOA. Now, if he just achieves what JCPOA was achieving without the war, then in the election, Democrats are going to mock him as to after spending so much of money, you are still doing exactly the same thing which we did by JCPOA. So what the hell have you done? So this is also a pressure. So that is why he is actually looking at achieving something more. So JCPOA plus is what is aim,
Okay.
which I think is badly missing out.
What will
Back
be,
to you.
Nirmala Abraham, what could be that plus then? What could be that plus that will tell Trump that enough is enough?
I think if he proceeds with this, and as I said, if God forbid something bad happens to U.S. troops, that would be the point. But knowing Trump and what he has done in the last 6 years, starting from 2016, obviously as president, he is not willing to stop because, as mentioned by the other panelists, you could take it as I'll give a metaphor. I mean, take it as a test match. India or Australia is playing Zimbabwe. All Zimbabwe has to do is knock the ball down, block it the whole day, and they can be happy with a draw. That's Iran's side. All they have to do is block it, end it in a draw, they still succeed. The US has to win this. So if at this point or at any point in the next 1 week, without a subsequent damage inflicted on Iran, if Trump decides to shake hands, and if you clearly look at his negotiation points, which are now under the scrutiny by Democrats itself, it is going to look bad for Trump. And if we know what Trump is and how his ego works, I don't think he will ever be willing to accept that because as Major General rightly mentioned, JCPOA, Trump withdrew in 2018 claiming that they should not be allowed to even enrich uranium for peaceful or civilian purposes. Now he's willing to accept that. So why spend 7.5 years allowing Iran to enrich uranium to 60% and now starting a war, spending thousands of crores of dollars and all these lives? Why did you do it? Would be a question that he would face in the midterm elections coming up in November. So if you were to just judge by the timeline, the midterm elections begin in the first week of November. He wants to make sure that this doesn't remain in the minds of people because at the moment the approval ratings are very much down. Even within his party, there are factions. Remember Steve Bannon, Trump's closest ally, he left. He's saying this is a war you're fighting for Israel. I don't support this. Tucker Carlson left the cause. Candace Owens left the cause. The late Charlie Kirk, there are videos of him now talking about the utter stupidity US could commit by going in to Iran for a ground invasion. So even within the conservative circles, even within the Republican Party, there are leaks and that will affect him badly. And if he decides to shake hands right now, that means it's a defeat for Trump. So Trump will find a way to somehow create a substantial damage or a substantial win and then shake hands, because at the moment it doesn't look like a win because all the negotiation points have been lightened in favor of Iran, but Iran would still not accept it because even if you look at the beginning of the war, right before the war, there were 3 rounds of negotiations and they were making progress. And unexpectedly, suddenly the US decides to attack Iran. And so Iran, I don't think will accept it because at the moment, all they have to do, as I said, is survive, and they're surviving. Trump, on the other hand, has to make a substantial win or has to make it look like a substantial win. That is the crisis that he's facing right now.